Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our June 2024 event. My name is Greg Davis, as you can see on the screen there, as well as being Director of Market Development. I'm also Chair of the London branch, and welcome on behalf of the branch to the Futures in the Air. I've added a little bit to that, as you can see, where you can feel it everywhere, blowing with the winds of change, 1991, and that is one of my challenges to you throughout the presentation. The titles of each section are going to be a song title with a date, a year in brackets afterwards. And as we're going along, I just thought my challenge to you would be, can you name the band? So as I'm running through, do think of that and see how many you can get. I will go through them at the end. So yeah, the session today we're going to talk about air quality, both ambient and indoor. It's one of those things when I last spoke to you all on water that we tend to take for granted. We know air and water's there. We turn on the tap, or air's all around us. Sometimes we know when it's very poor, and sometimes we know when it's very good. But for the vast majority of the time in between, we don't really know. I'd just like us to consider that more broadly as part of today's presentation, but also just to get you thinking, raise a few questions as to where we are with regards to your not just your IQ, but your indoor air, how good your indoor air knowledge is. And the first one is the average Briton is estimated to spend what percentage of time indoors? And the options we have are 60 to 70%, 70 to 80%, 80 to 90%. And again, you're marking your own scorecards here. So decide on an answer. Give you a couple of seconds to do that. And if you've all got an answer, the actual one is, believe it or not, 80 to 90% on average. And this is information that comes from the UK Parliament. It was the Indoor Air Quality Post Brief from September of last year. And it said people spend 80 to 90% of their time indoors, open brackets, homes, schools, workplaces, and other public places, or on transport. The effects of poor indoor air quality on health are less well understood than those due to poor outdoor air quality. So it's a place where we spend more time, but maybe air quality from a health perspective is a little less understood. And when we're in those environments, how many breaths a day do we take on average? And even the lower one there, 6 to 11,000, seem to me quite a lot. But if you're deciding on what your answer might be, last couple of seconds, and it is, excuse me, between 17 and 28,000. Paradoxically, and do excuse me, I may cough a little bit. I'm suffering with the residue of a cold, which of course is more person-to-person contact than indoor air quality. But yeah, in terms of our normal respiration rate, in a healthy adult is about 12 to 20 breaths per minute, which equates to between 17,000 and 28,000 a day. Having said that, though, our respiration rates can be affected by many different factors, such as alcohol, health, again, anxiety, fever, heart condition would be examples of that. Exercise and fitness. And as I think most people are aware anyway, children breathe at a slightly faster rate than adults do too. So in 2019, excuse me, my third question to you, what percentage of the world's population were living in places which didn't meet the WHO air quality guidance, their AQG levels? And I'm putting this together in looking at even the best case scenario there is not a good case scenario. But if you haven't got your answer already, it's coming up now. The actual answer is at 99%. And to quote the WHO data shows that almost all the global population, 99% of us, breathe air that would exceed their limits and contain high levels of pollutants, with lower middle income countries suffering from the highest levels of exposure. Air quality, the WHO go on to say, is closely linked to the Earth's climate and ecosystems globally, and many of the drivers of air pollution, i.e. the combustion of fossil fuels, are also sources of greenhouse gases. So in terms of managing and reducing air pollution, it's a win-win strategy for both the climate and health. Question 4. Poor air quality is linked as a contributory factor to how many UK deaths per year? maybe something that not a lot of people has considered. But again, the number is substantial in terms of poor air quality. Again, across the limit there, if you're all deciding on an answer. And the actual one is more than 25,000, which may be a surprise and may not be a surprise. This was research. This was really figure was derived at from two areas. One, there was a research project done by the Royal College of Physicians and Paediatrics and Child Health, which was called Every Breath We Take. And it was looking at the lifelong impact of air pollution. They were estimating about 40,000 early deaths a year were caused by poor air quality. Public Health England, again in March 2019, also published a review in looking to improve air quality in the UK. And that identified that air pollution being the biggest single environmental threat to health in the UK, with between 28,000 and 36,000 deaths a year attributed to long-term exposure. They want to say there is strong evidence that air pollution causes the development of coronary heart disease, stroke, respiratory disease, lung cancer, and exacerbates asthma. And then our final question, looking at a little bit more workplace orientated in this one, what percentage of the estimated current annual deaths associated with occupational lung disease are non-asbestos related lung cancers? Got three options here: 14%, 24%, and 34%. So again, give you a second or two to contemplate what your answer might be, and it's actually the one in the middle, 24%. So yeah, non-asbestos lung cancers are 24%. 34% is COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. 20% attributed to mesothelioma, which of course is directly asbestos-related lung cancer. Similar percentage, 20% to non-mesothelioma asbestos-related lung cancer, so lung cancers of other types, but also asbestos-related, and 3% to other diseases. So air quality does have and can have a dramatic effect, both with regards to our occupation and our general existence. And it's not just confined to outdoors either. Outdoors and indoors can have equal significance. So on to number two, The Air I Breathed, 1974 is the title of this. If anybody remembers that far back, quite a famous song. I'm not going to sing any of these. I did say to Julie before we started, I won't sing any of these. I don't think anybody would thank me for that. It's a small mercy that I won't. But yeah, that may be one that will go through your mind if you can remember who sang that one. But in terms of looking at air quality, three main constituents we would consider, which is the gas within it, the dusts within it, and any biological agents within it. And when we're separating these out from a gaseous perspective, not only do we have oxygen and nitrogen and carbon dioxide, the various things that would naturally make up air, but other considerations, carbon monoxide, again, from fossil fuel combustion and other processes, various oxides of nitrogen, VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and other chemicals would all be constituents of gas, depending on which environment you're in. Some of them would be naturally occurring. Some of them may be a byproduct or a direct product of a work activity. In terms of dusts, particulate matter would be one and is a major consideration at the moment. So looking at the fraction of dust within the air, within the environment that is inhalable and respirable. So our PM10 fraction and PM2.5 fraction respectively. Other fractions are being looked at in detail now about the effects they could have, but PM10s, PM2.5s are the general ones at the moment that most people would be testing for. Carbon in the form of soot from vehicle combustions, crystalline material, be that respirable crystalline particles, which is something the agency is looking at, or other materials such as paper, dust, wood, etc. Again, that could be the naturally occurring or derived from a specific environment. The final one then is biological. So general bacteria we will get that exist in the air anyway. Other things in the air we don't want, such as Legionella and various fungi, molds, pollen, and other allergens we could get that, again, could vary dependent on the time of year, but will represent a percentage of what is in our atmosphere and environment, and could be having an effect. Excuse me. So they're the major constituents. If you look at the health impacts of air, and we've moved on again, we've got Breathing 1980 as our song for this section. While we've touched on some of these in terms of the health implications and health effects, and the majority of them, as we would expect, are lung related, to either lung infections, lung cancers, COPD, emphysema, asthma. But there are a host of other cause effects that poor air quality can have. It was touched on by Public Health England in terms of affecting our cardiovascular systems and our central nervous systems, can affect our reproductive systems and infertility, and also affect other organs such as the liver and spleen in response to various different pollutants that may be in the air. So there is a host of different effects that air can have. And the WHO figure again here, an estimated 4.2 million premature deaths globally are linked to poor ambient air or ambient air pollution. That is ambient air, would be outside air. Two considerations we need to make here: what do they account for, and what are the pollutants with the strongest evidence for concern from a public health perspective. In terms of what those pollutants lead to, we have exactly the breakdown we saw on the previous slide, where if it's bookended by diseases associated with the lung, either lung cancer or pulmonary, and then in the middle we've got stroke and heart disease. But the percentages there, particularly of COPD, is about 43%. So a significant factor there. And pollutants, those pollutants with the strongest evidence, again, this is WHO-based research. We've got that particulate matter, so then PM10s, PM2.5s, and potentially other fractions. Ozone is on the list, and then we've got the dioxides of nitrogen and sulfur, respectively, as being the major causes, but not the only ones. So they certainly would need to be targeted as part of any suite of testing you may be doing, certainly in ambient air. As far as occupational lung disease goes, we've got that breakdown. So the graph representing the point I talked about earlier with regards to the annual current death rates, lung disease deaths, you will see in the top left-hand corner there, about 12,000 cases each year. And then if you look down that left-hand side again, about 19,000 new cases. But I think hopefully a point for optimism is the graph. The graph is tracking mesothelioma deaths. So this is past exposure to asbestos, and has been climbing, as you will see there, right the way up to where we are now. But the future trend with regards to projected fatalities, which are still too many, one is too many after all, is reducing. And if that can happen, bearing in mind we've had asbestos in our properties for the last 150 years plus, even though the latency of exposure, 15 to 60 years, is long latency, if we can start to reduce this, then surely we can put in effect strategies to reduce others. And that is something that we will touch on a little bit later as far as some of the HSE programs go. So that was Breathing 1980. We're now into Atmosphere 1985. Again, you don't need to apologise if you remember who this is. Sadly, I did. But yeah, this is taken back, as you can see with the pictures, to the Great Smog in 1952. And that really focused certainly the government's mind with regards to the broad effect poor ambient air quality could have. Happened between the 5th and 9th of December 1952. Effectively, what we had was we had a very cold period, and bearing in mind most homes were heated by fossil fuels at the time. That meant there was a lot of fossil fuel being burnt. We had a very cold period and an anticyclone, and what that ended up doing was producing an inversion over London. So effectively, Greater London sits in a well, and what happened was a layer of cold air was trapping the warm air below, and that stopped anything dissipating for those days. Actually, the winds got up and it changed later on the 9th. but just some of the stats that came out of that. I mean, at the time, government medical reports estimated that up to 4,000 people had died as a direct result of the smog, and as possibly as many as 100,000 were affected by it. More recent surveys looking into it have revised those estimates, and they're now saying that the total number of fatalities possibly was as many as 10 to 12,000 just from that one event. But that did see a change, and by 1956, what we had was the Clean Air Act came into being. And since then, with regards to certainly environmental legislation looking at outdoor air quality, there has been a raft of it, and you will see it's been almost continuous if you look at the dates as to whether these things come in through the 80s, 90s, and quite a considerable amount through this century too, where we had our clean air strategy announced in 2019. That set out plans to deal with all sources of air pollution, making our air healthier to breathe and protecting nature, and obviously boosting the economy was the idea behind that. In conjunction with that, we've seen more recently the Environment Act 2021. You will see it now, and that's specifically targeting, was looking at specifically targeting PM 2.5s, as well, so setting targets for that, and looking at how we're gonna meet those or achieve those with regards to ongoing monitoring. Excuse me. With regards to health and safety legislation, we're still on atmosphere for the song title. So if you have that one, don't worry about it. If you haven't got it yet, a little bit more time to consider. Again, Health and Safety Work Act, 50 years old this year. That, as far as your duty of care to Section 2, Section 3, so your employees and people who are not in your employ, talks about health, safety, and welfare. Air quality could and is directly involved in that. You've got, for example, the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health. That cites anything. So that could be microbiological, that could be gaseous, that could be solid, as in a dust or other material. And again, the strategies for managing that, we're going to have later in the month, and details will be coming out soon, and a lively debate on, I think, the cost regulations and how well understood or misunderstood they are. So do look out for that. Information on that will be coming out soon. We've got workplace health, safety and welfare regulations. Regulation 6 talks specifically about ventilation and the requirements that are needed in place there. So your indoor air should be better or as good as a minimum that's coming into the property. Supporting the cost regulations, we've got EH40 that may be familiar to some of you, which is our workplace exposure limit, and we'll look at these in a little bit more detail in a second. And then various standards, guidance, best practice, and I just cited there the Health and Safety Priority Plan, occupational lung disease. That was 2017 as part of the HSE strategy, along with musculoskeletal and mental health, and all three of them still very applicable. That they were, you could argue, slightly prescient going into not knowing the COVID or the period of time we were going to go into, that each of these three would be so significant post-pandemic. So we have another one now. You've got two options for this one. Breathe, my section 5. Here I'm going to be looking at a little bit of history as far as how we've performed in ambient air quality. But yeah, you've got the 1996 option or the 2008 option there. But go back approximately 10 years, and it was some of this work that started that greater investigation by the Royal Colleges and Public Health England that estimated that particulate air pollution was contributing to about 7% of all deaths in the City of London. We go forward to 2017. These were our EU-derived targets, but London managed to breach its annual air pollution limit for the year in the first 5 days. So we've gone over our limit by the 5th of January. 2018, we've gone to weeks, so it's getting slightly better, but still really not very good. And the trend tended to go into the trend that our air quality, both indoor and outdoor, is not very good, but it is changing. You know, for example, if you look at 1990 as a benchmark, our levels of sulfur dioxide are 90% reduced compared to where they were then. And even with things such as we're looking at PM10s here, So, and this was across the country, all zones and agglomerations were compliant with the annual mean limit target set of, excuse me, for our PM10s. So they are starting to improve, and we will actually see potentially evidence of that later. So we're still on breathe. This is some information with regards to Public Health England, and it's identifying some of those major pollutant groups where they're coming from. And you'll see there that sulfur dioxide from the energy industries and manufacturing, they're tending to have the major share of that. Nitrogen dioxide is non-road and road transport. Industrial process and fugitive emissions. So fugitive emissions would be, for example, escapes from landfill sites where you may have a where the waste or where things are changing and emitting. They tend to be the highest for volatile organic compounds. Well, in this instance, non-methane related volatile organic compounds. Agriculture is the highest source of ammonia by some considerable margin. Yeah, for the particles, it's not road transport. If you look at that, while road transport does have a share of it, as does manufacturing. In actual fact, nearly 42% of them are coming from our domestic and our commercial properties. So again, there's something to explore there with regards to looking at reducing that. And that, as you can see, is Public Health England information. We are doing a lot, though. I don't know how many people are familiar with our Daily Air Quality Index. I don't know whether any of you use this. There's actually about 1,500 sites across the UK using automated and non-automated monitoring, which is divided up into 16 regions and zones, which you will see here. So you've got either a region or an urban area, which is covered and has monitoring in place, and it provides levels of pollution. So it's monitoring these, as I said, either at automatic or non-automatic sites. Considers 5 major areas or 5 major constituents. So nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone, and then PM10s and PM2.5s, those particles, and actually provides a map. And here we go. This was the one for yesterday that I put into the presentation. We do have a scale with it. It runs from low to very high. And we were between 2 and 3. So yesterday, air pollution levels would be low across the UK. Again, often associated, as we saw with the 1952 smog, with weather conditions and where it tends to be still and windless. Pollution levels can often increase, but it was quite wet and windy, and they tend to decrease. That tends to be a dampener. So that's do have a look at that if you're not aware of that. But that's produced every day through DEFRA. And we've also got, I've actually just highlighted the Mayor of London and the Lumber Assembly London Air Quality Map. That's the website front page, and that's where their monitoring stations are. There are a host of people providing daily and very, very frequent air quality indexes for London and indeed for other parts of the UK. These are not uncommon, even to the extent where some of them you can get an app, and the app will, for a particular morning, identify the best route for you to take if you're walking to work, or how to get to work, and where you can skirt to avoid areas of high pollution. One of the things the London Air Quality Map does, and there's an example here, and this is for nitrogen dioxide levels. So what it has is the map on the further right there, the one at the top, were nitrogen dioxide levels in 2019, and the lower of the two maps there, same area, but is looking at the predicted what the map would look like for 2025, so next year. And you will see from the scale there that it's going in the right direction. Where we only had that small area of yellow, which was the lowest point on the scale for 2019, vast majority of Greater London is now covered by that. And indeed, we're starting to see even lower levels drop down there, which is good. And again, is providing us with good information on where we need to target and how we need to go about reducing this even further. So on to number 6, breathe, open brackets, in the air, close brackets, 1973, probably off an album that certainly people of my generation would have had this record in their collection. I certainly have, if that provides you any clue at all. But with regards to monitoring or managing anything, and air quality is a good example of that, is what we have to recognize is that as far as our activity goes, and certainly from a business perspective, we've got somebody doing something somewhere. So there's people, place, and process paradigm, excuse me, comes into being. And this is one of the things we need to use and need to identify where the risks may be or where the hazards are, and therefore how we need to manage the risks as far as our air quality goes. And would you say that from a people from a user and employee perspective, air quality is important? Well, this is a graph that was produced from a report by Leesman. Some of you may be familiar with Leesman. They do very extensive surveying with regards to the built environment and user and employee satisfaction on all sorts of areas. This question was looking at the physical features of their workplace and how important and how satisfied they were with them. Air quality, if you hadn't already spotted it, is actually in the top third of the list. And what they found, as far as importance goes, nearly 70% of people thought air quality was an important factor. Yet only 42% at the time of the survey, excuse me, believed they were satisfied with their air quality. So there is quite a gap there between even those that consider it important, let alone those that don't, and how satisfied they feel with their environment. Report has been, or this survey has been, the question has been asked again, slight change. And again, the post-COVID figure we've got currently is importance, 65.6%, so pretty much the same, only a very, very marginal downward trend there. But encouragingly, more people are satisfied. That was up 8% at 50.3%. So perhaps a lot of those post-COVID controls we're seeing are having an effect from a user satisfaction perspective. So why monitor or assess air quality at all? For this one, we've got Another One Bites the Dust, 1980 to 2010. So again, a couple of options there. One, as we've already identified, it's the law, and depending whether it's general indoor air quality or whether you need to monitor and assess against specific gases, fractions of dust, or biological agents. There is, we've already talked about the regulatory framework around it, be it the Health and Safety at Work Act, be it the Controlled Substances Hazardous to Health regulations allied to the workplace exposure limits, or indeed from a workplace health, safety and welfare perspective. It also helps to proactively manage your building environment. I mean, by assessing your air quality, you then start to identify how your building is performing, because it won't be the same right the way throughout. And you may need to adopt, or you may need to tweak the controls slightly differently. How the building is set up, what it has within it, we'll talk a little bit later, can have a major effect. But it does help you proactively manage your building environment and certainly reduce customer issues and complaints. I think air quality after temperature and light stroke noise was the third highest cause of complaints from users or dissatisfied from users. Can help redress building performance issues. Again, ensuring that you're optimizing the equipment you have in place and it's operating as effectively as it can. Funny smells, not common, not uncommon. We'll get people said there's a smell coming from here. We think it could be an air quality issue. 99 times out of 100, it isn't. It's actually something physical. On the odd occasion, you can get something goes wrong, but having some form of monitoring or assessment in place can either dismiss that immediately or actually confirm and help you put it right. Can be very useful with things like post-occupancy evaluation audits. So not what the building looks like when it's up, but look what the building is, how it's performing when it's actually occupied, which of course is the most important thing. And is one of those we're seeing addressed in all sorts of ways and is long overdue. We've seen those changes with the Fire Safety Act, Building Safety Act, particularly coming in, and the Golden Thread, looking at whole of life. But if you look at design, construct, and operate as three stages of a building, operate is by far and away the biggest one. Yet it's the one that often we consider the least, and that is definitely going to need to change. Could be you need to assess your air quality because you're working to or looking at some form of standard. And it could be as a user reassurance for return to work, where people are looking for a lot more reassurance than they did pre-2020 in, if I'm going to come back to work, what's my environment going to be like? And again, we'll touch on this a little bit later in a bit more detail. So it's mentioned workplace exposure limit previously. For those who are not familiar with them, they're published. There are British occupational exposure limits, and they're set to help protect actually the workforce. So they set out what concentrations of hazardous substances are acceptable or are not in our air. So in our workplace environments, and then they're averaged over two time reference periods, so time weighted averages. They are a long-term weighted average, which is 8 hours, and a short-term, which is 15 minutes. Again, which you can assess these against, and there are different levels for thousands of hazardous substances. Again, some of which are gaseous, and some of which are dusts. What they look at in terms of some of the annotations, so some of the things they consider would be biological monitoring guidance values within there. So capable of causing cancer, those type of chemicals, capable of causing occupational asthma, and then specifically some of those that can be absorbed through the skin. And again, for each of these, there are various ratings, either guidance levels or assigned substances, where you've got dermal absorption will lead to system toxicity, as it says there for the SK categorization. So again, a host of those, thousands of those, of which some of them include these. And there are some quite obvious ones there, and some less so ones. But people who are working, particularly with sugar or sucrose, will know the hazard that can have. Phosgene gas, not pleasant any time. But touched on a couple of these earlier as well, with regards to, for example, respirable crystalline silica, and indeed maybe some of the byproducts. Wood dust is another one. Some of the byproducts of welding or metalworking fluids that, again, we're going to touch on in a second. Sorry, every breath you take, we got there. Let's go back to that one. 1983, I hadn't highlighted that one. Apologies. Number 9 in the air tonight. So with regards to our air quality monitoring strategies, what should they be? Particularly for a workplace. First one's going to be the type of work that will have a direct bearing. It could be, while sometimes it's just ambient air or indoor you would be exposed to, for example, if you've got office work in areas, I've put a few down here. So construction, automotive, manufacturing, even education, with regard to some of the science labs and things, that may bring you into contact and exposure with chemicals that most of us otherwise wouldn't see. They would need to be considered initially. Excuse me, where the location of work is, again, indoor, outdoor would have an effect. But other examples there, including workshops, laboratories, offices, factory settings. Again, so what type of work you're doing, where you're doing it, what are you likely to be exposed to in terms of dust, gases, and microorganisms? Are there any known hazards within there as part of the work you're actually doing? Or might they be indirectly hazards in terms of the air within the local environment, where something that you're not dealing with on a day-to-day comes in as a potential pollutant? And then with regards to those elements such as the frequency and duration, so for excuse me, sorry, for how often and how long would that exposure occur? What controls can you put in place? Can you actually remove it altogether? And if not, what can you do with regards to local extract ventilation, RPE, PPE, time limiting time of exposure, etc., which is some that people may be familiar with as a control in, for example, asbestos, and then monitoring and maintenance where that may be needed, with regards to what health surveillance might you need or what equipment might you might you have so exposure badges, etc. Again, I think a lot of people will be familiar with where you're working and you've got specific pollutants or specific hazards you're working against. Touched on these earlier. Occupational lung disease in 2017 was identified, and while asbestos has been a major campaign over a number of years run by the HSE, they're now starting to look at other things such as metalworking fluids, such as welding, and indeed such as respirable silica. And they're not only increasing information on these, but providing, you will see that on the one for respirable silica. That was July last year. The HSE launched an inspection initiative looking at that. They've also, anybody that gets HSE updates will have seen this with regards to metalworking fluids as well, been mounting a campaign on that as well. So they are broadening to not just asbestos related, which still, while it remains the largest occupational health exposure killer we have, there are others that we need to be looking at too. So number 10 on my list, take my breath away, 1986. What controls should we have in place with regards to our air quality monitoring? So the first one is, as I touched on just now, look to eliminate, can you use an alternative if you have a reagent or you have another chemical that can be replaced by something that does an equally good job but provides much less of a hazard. Lugless track ventilation, touched on this. Various different kinds you can have in place depending on your activity or what work you're doing. Always, again, most important one at the bottom is make sure that it's operating as it's intended, as it should be. And you do need to maintain them, and you do need to monitor them, particularly where you've got they're movable. So you could just by natural use, you could find that they deteriorate more quickly. We've got our respirable protective equipment, either respirators or breathing apparatus. Again, there's very, very different huge amount of different styles of this. Excuse me, and then we've got our masks or our hoods or our helmets with regards to tight-fitting, loose-fitting face pieces, respectively, and is something that more people got quite familiar with regards to COVID-19 and the huge debate over, is it a face mask or is it a covering, what it's designed to do. With regards to dust masks, certainly from a workplace perspective, there will be this FFP1, FFP2, FFP3 that I think most people are familiar with, and some people may already be aware of this as well. But that's filtering face piece, and really they're classed on that basis, looking at two factors. You've got your occupational exposure limit, and then your assumed protection factor, so the OEL and the APF. And for FFP1 masks, which is low, they are, you can see what they're designed against, and they're 4 times for each. Our FFP2, which is moderate, and that offers 12 and 10 respectively. And then our FFP3, which are the higher ones, which are 50 and 20. But again, it goes back to how well the mask is fitted in the first place and what condition it's in, as to how much of that you will actively realise. So, looking at our workplace environments then, and just general indoor air quality, what are some of the factors that will affect it? Most obvious one being, is your workplace mechanically or naturally ventilated? That will have a different, if it's naturally ventilated, there is little you can do about controlling the air that comes in through the windows in terms of its constituents. If it's mechanically ventilated, there is substantially more you can do. Where are the air intakes you've got? Goes without saying, can be very obvious. Some people, architects in instances, don't always realise it though, that an air intake at ground floor or sub-ground floor level will be exposed to a vastly greater amount of pollutant within that air than it will be if it was, for example, on the 4th floor, the 8th floor, the 10th floor, or on the top of the building, however high the building may be. So that can have an effect. Having said that, equally, even siting an air intake at roof level and then siting a kitchen extract next to it which again would something that's not uncommon. You might get adverse effects from that. So where is the intake located, and what are the potential influencing factors around that is a consideration. How the ductwork is distributed from the property. Is it just a single drop down duct? Does it have branches off? Has it got a secondary or tertiary system on it? Will affect overall air quality. Are there any terminal units? So is the system directly ducted down and it just fires air out of a terminal grill, or does it have a fan coil unit or a VAV box, or some other form of additional terminal unit that could be heating, could be chilling, and also could be recirculating part of the air within that as well. Excuse me, that will have an effect. How the building's been compartmentalized. What was it designed to do? If it was designed to be an open plan office area, floor plate of, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30,000 square feet, and you've then segmented it by putting up a whole host of offices, was how the ventilation system was designed to work taken as part of that a consideration in that? Because it isn't always, and you can in those instances have parts of the building that have a more than ample supply of forced air, and you can have other parts of the building that have next to none, and they are the parts that people often tend to complain about. Occupancy levels is a huge factor, particularly over the last 20 years. We've got very good and very sophisticated at being able to get more people into a space and more people using that available space over that time period. Often what's not considered, the size of the desk, the amount of chairs, the electricity you need is all factored in. What isn't is, well, how capable is the air handling unit of dealing with this additional load in terms of supply and extract rates? Not often a consideration, can lead to problems. Not always. How the system is maintained and cleaned. What do you have in place with that? Again, great example of this would be if you're in an urban area and they're deciding to demolish or externally refurbish or sandblast a building across the road. The maintenance regime you've been operating when that wasn't in place probably isn't going to be sufficient while that work's ongoing. And there are things you need to do about that, including getting in touch with them. Because there is often, free bit of advice, that there is often a sum of money that you can reclaim back from whoever the developer or whoever the principal contractor is, with regards to we've needed to increase our filter changes. So it's certainly worth asking the question if you are in that situation. And then finally, what checks have you got going on your systems? Do you know what good looks like for your system? And do you know how often you're achieving it? Or more importantly, where you're not? So some of the things we need to consider against that. So your air handling unit design and efficiency, what is it there to do? And is it capable of delivering that today? Contaminated versus clean filters, changing your filters more regularly, very counterintuitive in terms of promoting air quality, because even with the high spec filters we're using today, you tend to find that when you put a brand new set of filters in, they're not at their optimum filtration efficiency. And a dirty filter, just by looking at it, doesn't necessarily mean it's an overloaded filter. The fact it's got dirt on it is usually an indication it's doing its job, up to the point where it is capturing more of the contaminants that are coming into the office than are coming through the other side. There will come a point where that may change, where the filter becomes saturated and it needs to be changed. But yeah, just changing your filters more often could be counterproductive in terms of overall air quality. Another one we see on a relatively regular basis, particularly just coming out of that period now, particularly in the springtime, when we get those frosty mornings and the dew point's low, because you end up with low humidity. Low humidity can often lead to static buildups of static electricity. They can often be mistaken for, so these static charges, particularly if occurring on the lower legs, with regard to contact with carpets, etc. can be confused for flea bites, and we will get, as I said, on occasion, people say we think we've got fleas in the office, and actually it's not. It's levels of low humidity, which can be redressed quite quickly, and the problem goes away. The need for ductwork cleaning, again, something that's been on the increase post the pandemic, but is it really needed? What is the information based on? Yeah, there are certainly on occasions buildings we've gone to where there has been some form of cleaning needed, but overall, what information do you have to assess the performance of your air handling system, and how is that being used against what's being said in terms of needed ductwork cleaning? Refits and refurbishments, what effect do they have from your primary source of air right the way through to what could they be introducing? So particularly refurbishment with furnishings, volatile organic compounds can be an issue with regards to those. If you have, I don't know, 150 desks or 60 chairs, whatever the figure might be, often they're designed, manufactured, they're wrapped. You're familiar with how they come. Often whatever's trapped in there then isn't released till it gets into the office. So it could be that you need a strategy in place for how you manage that to help reduce that. Classic one here, occupants tampering with the environmental conditions. I don't think I've found an office where everybody's happy with it. There's always somebody who's either too hot or too cold, usually both at the same time. But opening windows is another classic one. The amount of times, both from an energy and an environmental perspective, I've seen windows opened in common parts. So the window's open, it's blowing a gale, and it's below a radiator that's pumping out heat. Again, counterproductive on all sorts of measures. Environmental concerns is another one, and it is about a balance. Running systems 24 hours a day, 365 days a year has a consequence from an energy perspective and a whole of life perspective for that plant and equipment. It has a carbon value. So how we go about managing those needs to be factored in, as indeed does the other big consideration at the moment, which is wearables, where we've now got more people access to more information on our buildings and its performance than we ever have had before. It is far more visible. What we do need to ensure, though, is both with regards to that tech that people may be coming in and using, your building management system, any additional units that you're putting up, so devices you have in place to monitor anything from particles to carbon dioxide levels, is one, what is the quality of it? Two, how calibratable and how accurate is it? And because these are the things you will be basing your actions on. So knowing that you have a reference, comes back to your air quality monitoring, that is accurate, is traceable back to national standards, has been recently calibrated, and if it's saying, for example, your carbon dioxide level is 650 parts per million, it is 650 parts per million plus or minus 10. I'll give you an example of that during COVID, where a lot of people put CO2 monitors in. Best one I saw was in an office where, again, calibrated almost immediately before I went out on site. They were saying 610, we were saying 615. That's pretty tight, I believe that. On the other hand, I had one where we were reading 1,250, which is a more than a little raised level of carbon dioxide. The unit they had in the room was reading 900. That is quite a big discrepancy, but that was down to the quality unit, the calibration, where it had been cited, etc. So all these do come in, but just as a point to consider there. And finally, finishing up, so we've got Breathe Me 2004 is my last song title. Excuse me. And if you look at, with regards, I've talked about this a couple of occasions, user satisfaction, but it can be more than that. So smells, drafts, or the office is stuffy, it's too hot, it's too cold, I get a headache, I can't open the windows, I've got sore eyes, runny nose, scratchy throat, which actually I have, but not related. All these do have an impact, and they do have an impact not just from a satisfaction perspective, but from your employees, from a well-being perspective, from a cognitive function. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the research with regards to raised carbon dioxide levels and cognitive function. I think it's quite eye-opening. You can see a drop in cognitive function with increased levels of CO2 and ultimately productivity. So it's a little bit like having good air quality. The WHO said it was a win-win for health and the environment, and it's a win-win-win for health, the environment, and your employees. So just to finish up with, one of the things we've been doing on indoor air quality as an organisation, we've been independently and UKAS accredited, assessing air quality since, well, I've been doing it since the late 1980s. We've got a database of hundreds of thousands, millions of readings of data points across buildings. And one of the things I did was going into and through COVID was looking at, well, what have the differences been? So I interrogated our database and actually came up with these as figures. So these are the percentage of results that required action from the work we were undertaking. So microbiologically, before COVID, air quality was very good. During COVID, air quality was very good, unsurprisingly. Seen a slight increase, though, in 2023, gone up ever so slightly in terms of microbiological air quality results that needed looking at. From a carbon dioxide perspective, prior to COVID, a little bit more of an issue. And I alluded to this previously with regards to certainly occupation densities and the amount of occupation, not from a fire perspective, but from a just building user perspective, versus air handling capacity and some things that needed to be changed. That, unsurprisingly, went down a lot. We had buildings on full fresh air running at 100%, and nobody in them, so carbon dioxide not an issue. That's come back. This bounced back to about 2%. And the question there, I think that most people will be asking, or two takeaway facts here. One, air quality on the whole in very well-maintained, well-managed buildings is very good. And I'm specifically talking about mechanically ventilated buildings here. Where they're well-run and where they're well-maintained, certainly results we've been getting literally over decades indicate that air quality is very, very good. Not always, but usually there is a direct reason for that. That can be found out from monitoring. And the second question is, what's happened in 2023, or what happened over last year? Wait and see what this year says, as to why we've had that slight spike in both. And this is down to one of those points I've already been making. It's about occupancy levels. Here, if you go back, so this was some stats and research some sources we sourced from elsewhere, and some work we did ourselves. But what looked like average occupancy rates of a premises, a typical large office building, for example, in the middle of London or Manchester or Birmingham, where occupancy on Monday was quite low. That increased dramatically on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tended to be the dates most people were in, and then Friday again it would drop off quite significantly. What we were tending to find, and particularly where we started to identify issues, is that the air handling system, building management system, had been set up to run the same on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Well, if it was doing that, while it was catering for the average, in actual fact, it was only hitting those at 2 points during a Thursday and a Monday afternoon and a Friday, Thursday evening, Friday morning. So what needed to be done was the controls needed to be adjusted to actually reflect what the occupancy levels are like, because what you're seeing above that for most of the time, either you weren't doing enough above or you were actually doing too much, and that's counterproductive again from both an energy and a health perspective. So again, another bit of information for you to consider there, and by resolving that, a lot of those problems with regards to both microbiological quality and CO2 went away. So just to finish up, and I'm conscious of time, with regards to indoor air quality and your workplace, why monitor? Promote your organisation's culture, certainly if you're looking to, with regards to health and well-being, can reduce a huge amount of staff sickness, absenteeism, and indeed leavism for people who are particularly satisfied with their building environment. Wouldn't be the first time. Will save you a huge amount of money in asset life and management, and with regards to energy costs, and if tied in properly with regards to environment and net zero, will also support those. will keep you on the right side of the law. You can actually use the benchmark information you've got for future performance. So, you know, where you do put changes in place so that you've got usable information on how your building performs. Should any of your staff come and ask, what is our air quality like? If they do need reassurance, so you've got information to say what it's like. And finally, it's good. It works for everybody. You're building your business and your health. So my final point would be to you all, with regard to wellbeing strategies, we're seeing it's words being used. Usually, actually, health, safety, and wellbeing, going back to 1974, is in the Health and Safety at Work Act. It's what it talks about, your health, safety, and wellbeing. But in all its guises, and we're not just seeing nutrition and financial health and physical health and mental health, but as part of your welfare strategy, should air quality not be included in that? In terms of managing it, I'll just leave that. So that one in the bottom right there, should that not be added as a potentially missing part to your jigsaw? And I'm going to finish up there and say thank you very much. I don't know if you've got any questions, and leave you, as you will see there, with my favourite quote with regards to air quality, which is George W. Bush, who said, "It's not pollution that's killing us, it's the impurities in the air and water around us that is." And on that note, I'll say thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for soldiering on. I felt for you, and your throat's going, and it constantly talking, and it tickles more and more, doesn't it? So
it does. Hopefully, it wasn't too much of a distraction.
No, it wasn't at all. I think you probably felt it more than we did. We haven't got any questions so far.
Okay.
Has anybody got any questions? Or here we go. I think that might be a question, or is my mouse just jumping around? No questions yet. So are you going to tell us what the songs, what the
songs are? Well, that's a good question. I thought that'd be one. Okay, then. So how did you do with regard to the songs?
I only got a few of them in the 80s.
Let's finish up with this. Well, no, that's still good. I think it's quite an eclectic mix, Julie. So I don't think I'm not sure everybody would have every genre or every artist potentially, but they were all air related. So the first one was Winds of Change, 1991. Congratulations to anybody who got the Scorpions for that one.
I've never heard of them.
I Breathe with the Hollies.
No, I didn't get that one either.
Might remember that one. Number 3, Breathing, Kate Bush.
No, I didn't get that one. It's shocking.
Kate Bush had a little bit of a renaissance there. Number 4, Atmosphere, was Russ Abbott. Again, don't know whether you got that one or not, whether you admit to it. Number 5, Breathe. 2 options here. In 1996, you could have had The Prodigy, or in 2008, it was Taylor Swift. Number 6, Breathe in the Air. Breathe, open brackets, sorry, in the Air, close brackets, 1973 was, of course, Pink Floyd. Another one, Bites the Dust. 1980 or 2010, you could have had Queen or the cast of Glee. Every Breath You Take was The Police. In the Air
I got that one.
Was Phil Collins. Forever to be Associated with a Drumming Gorilla. Take My Breath Away, 1986, was Berlin. The last one was Breathe Me, 2004, which was Sia. So congratulations to anybody that got any of those. I hope it wasn't too much of a distraction, but I hope it maybe added a little bit to...
I got 3. So the 80s, the 80s is my era, so you can probably age me from the music that I know.
Well, that's fair enough. And you're on 75% from the 80s there, Julie, which is, I think is good in anybody's book.
I like to try and sing them in my head, and then they come to you, don't they?
They do. Yeah, and apologies for any earworms if you find that you're now singing in the air tonight, or you're going do.
We've not had a question, but we've had a comment from Nicholas, who says, "No question, but a massive thank you for such a thorough overview."
Okay, no, thank you very much. Thanks, Nicholas. Hopefully you did find that of use. As I said, my contact details I think are on the last slide. If anybody wants any further information or anything, then please do feel free to get in touch with me.
Nicholas has just added karaoke RSM next time. Now there's a thought.
What a great idea. That might be something for Christmas.
I'm definitely not singing though. You don't want to hear me sing.
Have we got a playlist?
I'm tuneless.
Yeah.
I once got, you know, back in the days when you used to go carol singing, I once got told I was singing flat, and yeah, I was.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much taking the standard to me. Although I'm looking at number 7 now with Another One Bites the Dust, and maybe the cast of IIRSM. That would be quite a good
We
karaoke.
can make it a Zoom meeting, then we can unmute everybody and they can all
Yeah.
join in. Well, thank you so much, Greg,
No, that's great.
especially with the throat issues. It must have been quite difficult. You
Yeah.
go and have some honey and lemon and maybe a wee dram in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like a very good idea.
Yeah. So thank you for attending, everyone. I'll be uploading the recording to the YouTube channel today on Monday. And I'll hand over to you for closing comments, Greg.
Brilliant, Julie. Thanks again, as ever, for all your support in delivering these.
More than welcome.
We certainly wouldn't be there without you. And thanks for all those who've invested the time. I hope you find that useful. And just to wish you a great rest of your day. Many thanks.
Bye, everyone.